For millions of years, mankind lived just like the animals. Then something happened, which unleashed the power of our imagination. We learned to talk. There's a silence surrounding.
And I'm pretty upset by this, but Matt and some of the others have cautioned me not to read too much into it. But this Pat Tillman guy was NFL football player, pro player who kind of said, well, I'm going to go fight in Afghanistan for the good fight back when we were, going after Osama bin Laden. But Pat Tillman was killed in an incident of friendly fire. Apparently he was killed by 3 bullet holes in his forehead from about 10 yards away. So it wasn't he was shot in the back by accident or something. But apparently his last words have now come out in the investigation. And apparently he was on the ground with another colleague who was apparently gripped with fear or something, and having trouble, and asking for God to help us. And Tillman said to him, "Would you shut your expletive mouth? God is not going to help you. You need to do something for yourself, you sniveling ... And the way I read this is those were his last words, and then he was killed. So I have to wonder. It leaves the idea in my mind that maybe he was killed for his atheism, or for for being hard on this poor guy who was blabbering on about God. Anyway, so it looks to me like he was killed because he was an atheist by his colleagues there, his fellow troops. So that's how I read this, if you put all the pieces together. But maybe not. We don't know the circumstances.
And in fairness, I don't read anywhere near that much into it.
Okay.
The guy was definitely killed by friendly fire. They have yet to demonstrate that it was intentional, although it might have been. But you need to demonstrate that first it was intentional, and then you can go from there to he was killed because he was an atheist. Which may have been the case. I don't know. I'm not going to say either way. To me, the important thing about this is that there was, in fact, an atheist in a foxhole, and he was the only one who had his head screwed on straight when the bullets started flying. His buddy next to him is sniveling on the ground, praying to God to help him. And this shows how religion pollutes the mind and makes people ill-prepared to face reality and deal with things. And Tillman was able to keep his head and try and say, hey, look, stop your sniveling. God's not going to help you. You need to pick up your rifle and help the rest of us before we get killed. And those being his dying words, also I'm happy that nobody can turn around and make a claim that Tillman made some last-minute plea for Jesus because he got shot. So I think the things to take out of this story, regardless of whether or not we actually find out what in fact happened, whether or not it was intentional and what the reasons for it were, if it was intentional, is that we had somebody who was a rational, fine representation of what atheism is in a foxhole during a critical time.
Serving his country.
Yep. Trying to do good in the world, right next to a guy who, when the bullets started flying, might as well have peed himself and prayed to God to come save him. Now, I'm not belittling the dangers of being in a combat area. That's one way to find out exactly how strong you are in your beliefs and in your ability to deal with difficult situations. And I'm not going to fault anybody for breaking down. And it's understandable, which is the whole reason for this myth of no atheists in foxholes. It's predicated on the myth that when the going gets tough, when the chips are down, everybody's going to cave under pressure and appeal to God.
Atheists are going to cry to mama.
And the fact of the matter is, no, they're not, and this is proof of it.
Yep.
So
hopefully we'll never hear that little thing again.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I'm up there on the scaffolding, up high, a twist lock cord around my neck and just diving.
If you're still here, you most likely wouldn't die anywhere because God's got a reason for you to be here.